Frank Live. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate, leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV Sticks, Roku Sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now joining me on Candid Frank Live, as usual, Aaron William Freeland. Aaron, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well. And yourself, Frank?
Ed, living an interesting life. You know what we've got going on here is very, very, very interesting. I tell you, Aaron, we've had a couple of years here where, we're having. I know. Well, listen, let's get to the sports first. Let's have some fun first, and then with the time we have left, we can talk about what's going on. We like to talk about that, and we'll share it with you, the viewers, if you're willing to stick around and check it out. Let's start with the Ticats.
Right. So we're looking at their kicker here. This is a little interesting bit of news that I stumbled across here. He hasn't played in the CFL yet, but Taj Leader does have a bit of a history with Canada. In March 2019, he was playing for the U.S. men's national rugby team that beat Canada 30-25 in Seattle. He added to the conversation on the game-winning try, saying, "I remember we were in Seattle and it was freezing. Canada was winning with a minute remaining and thankfully scored a try that put us ahead. I got to kick the conversion that put the cherry on top, which was a cool moment with fans chanting and everyone being excited because we scored. Canadian guys less so, but it's a nice memory for him at least." So I'd be anxious to see how he can do in the CFL.
Well, it's always been that American players are involved deeply in the Canadian Football League, but not as often in the national perspective. At least we don't hear about it that much because our national football team plays American players, and I haven't really heard much feedback on the American player from the American players' perspective. But we always hear about the Canadians because they do much better than people would give them credit, for doing. So that might be really interesting.
Well, I mean, to get most of his stats, he'd actually have to go to the spring league where he played for the Aviators, as well as Poland's Wrocław Panthers of the ELF. So, there's always that bit of research that has to be done. But I'm anxious to see how he does in the CFL, for sure.
Our loyalty to the CFL and, of course, our loyalty to the National Hockey League and the Canadian teams. The Maple Leafs and Red Wings played a game. I guess it's only fair to say a couple of years ago they played one outside. They called it a classic. I think this was the indoor classic.
This one was a bit of a carnival, kind of reminding me of a low-scoring NFL game or
10-7, yep.
Yeah, well, or maybe even a modern-day lacrosse game at this point. But after leading at 1.72 after two periods, in the first 5 minutes of the third period, Campbell allowed 3 goals and got yanked in favor of Mrazek, who promptly let in the first shot that he saw. Jack Campbell on the bench hadn't even had a chance to put his baseball cap on. He had just put down his goalie mask when they scored.
And in this game, three goalies were pulled.
Yeah.
Only one goalie, Mrazek, wasn't pulled. So in case you wonder how that works, folks, you have a starting goalie in Detroit. He gets yanked. The backup goalie goes in. Comes the third period, they yank the backup goalie and put in the original goalie. So it wasn't a game for goaltenders. I think the score kind of told us that, right?
Yeah, but every once in a while, you kind of need to have a bit of a carnival clown car kind of game like that just to get it out of your system. So
and you had to reach way back in your memory, and many people probably can't even remember the last time a Leaf player had 6 points.
No, I was thinking around World War II, World War One.
No. I got a painting. I got a souvenir scorecard with Daryl Sittler scoring 10 points in one game. I'll never forget that because it was like a day or two after my birthday, in fact, or before. It's like it was 20 years, 25 years. I think it was an anniversary, a big anniversary. Anyway. Great move for Daryl Sittler. And of course, they asked Daryl Sittler, "What did you think of Marner's feat?" And he said, "I'm not surprised," and he shouldn't be, except for the fact it's not 1980.
No, this is very true. And, I mean, I believe we passed the 45th anniversary for that particular
There you
game.
go.
So
there you go.
it's,
So that was a 10-point night.
yeah, that was the year after I was born, February 7th, 1976.
Oh, so you were around for that.
Well,
In
still
your
in
crib going,
diapers.
score, score. Your dad had a little hockey stick in your hand and the puck in the other hand. Yeah, I can imagine. I can see it. The Montreal Canadiens have won 5 straight, Aaron. What's up with them?
Yeah, this looks to be the new coach bump that every team seems to get. Only it took them a little while to actually get it for St. Louis. They are slowly rounding into shape as I mean, there's still a shadow of the team that went all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, but they're definitely not making the playoffs this year. But 5 in a
I was
row
just
is definitely
calculating
something.
that right now while you were speaking.
Yeah, no, I Snowball's chance in a microwave of making the playoffs at this point, but I mean, it's something at least. It gives their fans some semblance of hope, and maybe they won't start throwing jerseys on the ice.
Snowball's chance in Putin's future home. Connor scores twice. Jets beat Coyotes.
Yeah, this was one of those games where you hope for a result like this for the guys because it's been a while coming. But they finally broke a 4-game skid by playing the team that's good for what ails you, the Arizona Coyotes. Lowry, Svechnikov, and Wheeler scored for the Jets as well, who rallied from a 3-2 deficit in the third period. So he's made Eric Comrie made 27 saves in his first start since February 17th. He's made 3 starts in Winnipeg's last 26 games. So the fact that he managed to carry off a win this time speaks volumes to his preparedness. Glad to see that.
The Canes won their 5th in a row. Teravainen and Aho score against Edmonton.
Yeah, this is and again, the Edmonton Oilers. I'm not really sure what's going on there. Somebody
They're playing well. They're playing well, Aaron. They're just short, and unfortunately, being short can be costly.
Just a day late and a dollar here is basically what it looks like, So,
but if they play like that, they went into a version of Death Valley. We've referred to the Death Valley of the Florida teams and then Carolina. In here, it was a question of the Rangers, Florida, and Carolina, which is the Rangers. You throw them in, not as impressive as Tampa, but still impressive, and they did well. Unfortunately, they're in the position you and I both know that they can't afford to just be good. They have to be great to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, and at this point here, their last 10, the Oilers are 6-4-0. They're playing just above 500 hockey, and quite frankly, where they're sitting with 61 points, it's not good enough.
Not good enough. So they got to play better. Speaking of playing better, the Canucks play much better when Demko's in goal.
I've noticed that too.
Hey?
It's almost like he's their lucky charm, or he's actually good, which is
Can you
kind
imagine
of
what
nice
the
to
Leafs
see.
could do with that guy in goal?
Oh,
would they ever lose a game?
They'd find a way. I have faith. I mean, their road trip did get off to a good start. Let's be honest. They managed to hang a 5-2 loss on the Rangers on Sunday night, so that's good.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Happy for Demko in that regard. I just hope they don't play as well when they're here.
Both Vancouver and Winnipeg are in about the same stratosphere for making the playoffs. Edmonton has a bit of a leg up, and Calgary. My goodness, to Chuck and to Foley, they're making that team better. That team, and imagine a couple of years ago, Vancouver had Markstrom and Demko.
Now that was a definite Goldie tandem.
And you understand why they let Markstrom go.
Yep. And I mean, it was good to see Calgary win 7-3, basically because it helped them bounce back from a 7-1 loss to Vancouver on Thursday
Vancouver,
night.
yeah. Hey.
But I mean, Kachuk and Toffoli each had 2 goals and an assist. Blake Coleman had a goal and an assist, and Eric Branson and Andrew Mangiapane also scored. So it's nice to see them do that. I think the Flames are now 11-1 in their past 12 games,
They're
something like that.
incredible.
So
They're doing
yeah,
awesome. Speaking of doing awesome, not so much anymore. Running into a little dry spell. The other Toronto team, the Raptors. Van Vliet is nagging injuries, is creating a question. They're bringing up a player. The question is, Aaron, what happens from here on forward? Are there players that they can draw from somewhere to pick up the slack like they have in the past?
well, in previous seasons, especially when they were playing in the bubble, the Raptors bench came up huge for them. Now, the Raptors, as everybody knows, were on a 9-2 streak heading into the break with wins over the Hawks, the Bulls, and the Heat, and were actually fully healthy for the first time in months. But they lost OG Anunoby to a right ring finger fracture. Ow. And now he's gone in to see a specialist today. I haven't seen anything further concerning the results of that. Fred Van Vliet's right knee is sore, and Pascal Siakam has fallen ill. This is to a non-COVID related illness. But
It's
both
flu
Siakam,
season.
I you know, but with Van Vliet and Siakam at less than 100%, we're looking at the bench here to see who's going to pop. And Young is there, Trent Jr. is there, Barnes is there.
I think they'll be fine, but you really need to have when they don't have Siakam, Anunoby, and Van Vliet. That's a pretty large hit against your starters, right? And these are guys that they rely on heavily. Big minutes, tough minutes. Defense, offense, all that wonderful stuff. Yeah, they're missing them, and they're still in the playoffs. They're playing Brooklyn, that are right behind them in the last playoff spot. So, needless to say, the next game's going to be a biggie, and hopefully they can work things out as a roster. That's their biggest issue right now, Aaron. I think is what they're dealing with is their roster, and what you started this whole conversation about, which was, are there any players that'll pop up to make the team stronger? Well, we're going to find out.
Now, the good news is, while they do have a couple games, they got a game against Brooklyn, but Kyrie Irving still can't play for them. So that's,
He's waiting, right? So that's the COVID thing. That soon as the COVID thing is stripped away, he can come back and play. And good for him.
Even with New York dropping the vaccine mandate, though, there's still the private sector mandate, which applies to him. So while the state of New York may drop their vaccine mandates, the company that owns the Brooklyn Nets and owns the Barclays Center may not necessarily drop it. So he could still be SOL. Well, we'll see what happens.
I don't think so. I think they'll open up the ticket base a little bit. I mean, it's a business, and that's really real important, I guess. So, nearly $2 million worth of fines in COVID in BC were handed out, but only a fraction of that has been collected. Aaron, do you think they'll ever get it?
It's really unlikely at this point, mainly because most of the fines don't really have any teeth. Now, these fines are sent to collection agencies after 30 days if they haven't been disputed, and any outstanding fines will have to be paid when renewing ICBC insurance or a driver's license. But, for the most part, a lot of this is money that's going to be hung up in the system as people delay it. As it stands, 2,724 provincial tickets have been issued, of which 736 have been paid. So that's about 25%.
So Trump's buddy Putin is, he ain't putting on the Ritz, that's for sure. He is in fact, his country and a lot of the oligarchs are under, let's just say, under the possibility of being made very responsible for what's going on in Ukraine. I want to start by saying this. The one thing we always have to remember is that these people that we're talking about when it comes to the oligarchs, to us, we call them billionaires, very rich people, the richest people in the world. The oligarch name comes with Russians because they're not regular businessmen. In other words, the money that they got is shady in a lot of ways, right? Can we agree on that? So now
Yeah.
these guys find themselves, a lot of them populate England, London in particular, own soccer teams. They also buy dinners for $114,000 with politicians, even ex prime ministers and present day prime ministers. And, they drop 140 grand, 150 grand, 200 grand. They're influential. And as does happen in the world, Aaron, as we know, money can influence politicians. The one thing about we're learning here with this situation, the first thing I've noticed is that it doesn't matter from which country these rich people come. They can influence, or at least there are appearances that they're influencing. They're on the influence train, if you will. So, Aaron, how does the world deal with that kind of stuff? We know what they're trying to do. What they're trying to do is trying to say there's a cost, literally a cost. We're talking financial right now for people who are involved and or are what are referred to as enablers of Putin and his behavior.
Well, I mean, pay to play has always been a big aspect of any part of politics. This is evident, obviously, in the Soviet Union with the rise of the Russian oil oligarchs. This is visible in America. This is visible in Canada, Ontario, even where large chunks of land have been bought recently along the proposed route for the Highway 413. These are all supporters that have been tipped off as to the proposed route by Ford, who bought land that the province is going to have to buy off them. This is, how it works. They enable this sort of behavior. As long as the funds continue to flow in for Vladimir Putin from his various supporters and from the oligarchs, the more he will continue to believe that he can get away with this sort of behavior. The
Now,
problem then becomes
yes.
if there are consequences because of the sanctions that affect these individuals, it also negatively affects the population of Russia, most of whom, from reports that I've read and individuals that I've spoken to who have family in the old country, most of them don't support what Putin is doing in this particular case. So,
Well,
you know,
there
there's
there's a
spillover.
lot there's a lot to unpack here
Mm,
because we can talk about the army, but first, because I want to try and do this in some sort of systematic manner.
sure.
So what we've established is that a country that we in Canada have an affinity for, England, multiple reasons. Because it's England and the history we have, and because America to our south considers England, if not one of their strongest ally, one of their strongest. And I think they consider them their strongest ally, especially when it comes to wartime. Historically, we've always seen that the first group that the Americans turn to, no offense to Canada, are the English, right? In this case, when we hear the talk about support for Ukraine against Russia, Canada's the country that gets mentioned first. And I wondered about that. And then I followed on this story where we do have, in fact, some questionable behavior in England that might be a bit of a drawback when it comes to making oligarchs financially possible. With Canada now, they're getting involved more. The prime minister, whether he's having the conversation now or soon, or had it recently, I haven't had a chance to check that. He was going to talk about the status of Canada when it comes to the conflict. They're anti tank, sorry, ammunition is what they're providing them and the Ukraines. So there's that, right? There's the support with arms. There's the question of just getting people up to date. There's the question of, are the arms coming too late? You know, the Ukrainians want to see an anti-fly zone. As you know, we had a conversation before the show. The Americans can't do that because that would be tempting an all-out war, which the Americans don't want.
Now, the issue here is that I know that private airlines can avoid flying in there, right? So that's part of
Aeroflot
it.
can't fly in Canada.
No,
They're
no,
barred from playing here.
yes, and a lot of airlines are now no longer flying into and out of Ukraine. They've sort of imposed because of the status of the country and what's going on there. There's sort of a self-imposed no commercial fly zone. Um,
Exactly.
so that's one part of it. I know that Russia has now struck back and said, "Hey, we're not going to allow any of our planes to fly in there anymore either." That's sort of like saying you're not going to a party after being told that you haven't been
You're
invited.
not invited.
It's a little behind, but but it is true. Unfortunately, NATO really can't step in at this point. They're designed to be a non-partial, non-partisan sort of agency, unfortunately, and that means that a lot of what can be brought to bear won't be brought to bear just because of what's going on. This leaves it then to independent nations to step up and do their thing. And I for one am glad that the prime minister is going to be providing munitions for the Ukrainian army with which to defend themselves against this invasion. I think it's a valid thing to do. But the other thing that we have to really consider here is the continuing impact not only on Ukrainians but also on the Russian people, who may not necessarily support the actions of their leader. So that's
But this is usually the case. Leaders
yeah.
make decisions, and the most influential that make decisions for leaders, when those leaders make a mistake, whether it's on their own or with the help of those other influential people, it's usually the people at the bottom that pay the most for their mistakes because they cover their whats when they make a mistake. And unfortunately, the people who are left to pick up the tab are always the people who had less influence. And we must keep that in mind. And I'd like people to keep that in mind, that what Putin is doing is not something that the Russians as a people want him to do. Yes, we don't know which is which. We wouldn't know the difference unless we were there. Right now, we really don't know what's going on specifically at the very moment, but we have heard there are a lot of protests in all the major cities in Russia. There are people being thrown into jail, which happens there when you protest. There is no, there's no truckers convoy there. That doesn't happen there. You go and complain, you will not be there for 4 weeks. You will be gone. You'll be put away. So those people are very brave. So we know there's a lot of feeling about that. Today there was a text written from a son to his mother who was in Ukraine. And he talked to his mother about what was going on. And I'll highlight it this way. It was a very disturbing letter. Basically, what he said was he was surprised because he believed when they showed up, when the Russian soldiers rolled in there, they were under the impression that the Ukrainians were going to come out there like at the end of World War II. You know, those World War II movies when the Americans come into town and everybody's waving flags and saying, "Yay, you're here." No, that's not what happened. Instead, Ukrainian people stepped in front of tanks and allowed those tanks to hit them just to stop those tanks. People committing suicide to protect their country and their people. So he didn't find what he thought he would find. Now, we can, I didn't read the text. I didn't get the telephone. I didn't confirm that he was talking to his mother. This is a Ukrainian ambassador at the UN who said this. Is it true? I'm not sure, but it fits the story and it is the context of what's going on there. It is true, and I think we can believe this, folks, that not even the Ukrainians believed the Russians would do it, and they did it. The Russian soldiers were going for exercises, right? And now they end up in the Ukraine. You want to say something? Go ahead.
I was going to say, as a final thought here, Frank, before we go, I think everybody needs to make sure that they verify their sources.
Right.
It is tempting to report the fantastic and the wonderful, and the fact that Ukraine is rising up against the Russian invader, but at the same time, you have to temper that with the knowledge that for this sort of thing, there's going to be a lot of propaganda, and we need to be aware of that. We need to be careful about what we post. There are individuals who are there who may not necessarily want their location disclosed because it's dangerous for everybody right now. So please, when you see all these wonderful stories about people standing up to the invaders and you see videos posted about people stealing Russian tanks and that sort of thing, grain of salt, folks. Just check your sources and try to verify before you post anything.
Yeah, all I would like to, I won't speak for you, but all I'd like to establish here is that one thing is clear. The Ukrainian people are protecting their land. They are protecting their country, and they're making a stand. And I'm not surprised to hear stories like that, because essentially we've seen it through time that people will put themselves in harm's way to protect their way of life. And the reason why Ukraine is successful to an extent that a David can be, successful to a Goliath. We always know that when countries go into other countries to try and take over, the home country has advantages that the visiting country does not have. So when they say that the Ukrainians are putting up a good fight, you can believe that. They're at home. They have everything to lose. They're going to do anything they can to survive. And we're here to help them. And that's what every country outside their country should do. I want to add just 3 countries here I didn't get a chance to say: Norway, Sweden, and Switzerland. Crazy, Aaron. These countries never got involved in situations with Russia before. Switzerland with any kind of battle. They are now.
Well, what affects Ukraine affects more than just Ukraine. So I'm glad that they're on board.
I am too. All right. Well, we went a little too long there. Apologize, Eduardo. Aaron, thank you so much.
Thank you, Frank.
For Aaron William Freeland, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live. Aaron Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Network. For Candid Frank Live, other news, entertainment, and sports programming, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Ciao for now.